Welcome to Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston, PhD. Dr. Glenn is a clinical psychologist and former multi-million-dollar consultant to the big food industry and uses his experience to help you defeat your cravings. This show will help you to focus on dramatically reducing cravings and leaving the diet mentality behind, so you can more easily and effortlessly achieve your health, fitness, and body composition goals. Please remember, no doctor-patient relationship is created via this show, and you are responsible for confirming any changes to your diet, health, or psychological routines with an appropriately licensed professional before implementing them. Before we get started, if you haven't downloaded the free smartphone app to access dozens of these recordings all in one place, as well as to avail yourself of a confidential community for support, motivation, and assistance, please visit the podcast link on defeatyourcravings.com as soon as possible. And now, here's your host, Dr. Glenn Livingston.
Hey, it's the very good Dr. Glenn Livingston with defeatyourcravings.com, and I am here with one of my favorite master coaches, Kimberly. We've been working together for a long time now. How are you, Kimberly?
I'm doing good.
Good. For those of you who don't know Kimberly's story, you could hear it on previous episodes. But in a nutshell, she had diabetes and all types of kind of distorted thinking about food. And she says that we gave her a brain transplant.
Yep.
And, and she lost about 80 pounds and she no longer has those things. So you don't have diabetes anymore, right? Is that true?
Well, no, it's not completely true as far as not having diabetes anymore. But I used to inject insulin like 4 times a day. Haven't had to do that in 3 years. So it's completely controlled.
Wonderful, wonderful. And, I need to tell people that is not your typical result from taking our program. The typical client does reduce their overeating episodes by about 89% in the first month if they engage with the program. This was for the 2,000 or so people that went through our previous program while we were measuring these things. And they usually do lose at least some weight. And those numbers drop a little bit when you get to 5 or 6 months, mostly because of the people who stop doing what we taught them to do. Anyway, but Kimberly has had some miraculous results and people love her podcast. And I just asked Kimberly if we could talk about handling the holidays. We're recording this on December 12th, and we just came through Thanksgiving and Christmas is coming up. And I was just wondering, Kimberly, what thoughts you have, how you personally handle the holidays, what the people around you do. What do you think?
The holidays used to be the absolute worst as far as coming through the fall. There's something about fall, especially here in the US, where it's the new beginning time. We learn that in school. You're starting a new grade, blah, blah, blah. You get new clothes, new shoes, So there's something about the fall that to me was always this big grand kickoff of like, gosh darn it, this year is going to be different. And of course, by Halloween, usually that all falls apart. And the thing that was the worst about the December holidays was that I would fall off the wagon and all of the New Year's resolutions in the world would not get me back on. And then there would be like another month where the nonsense would roll out. You got to finish up all the holiday leftovers, right? There would invariably be a weight gain and a deepening of the physical problems, ailments, and so on and so forth that would go along with that. That was the biggest problem, falling off the wagon and not getting back on until damage had been done. And I think that's a really common problem in talking to friends that they really deal with, that it's one thing to create an exception for the holidays. It's another thing when that exception lasts for weeks and months afterwards.
So say a little more about that. What's the difference and what did you do differently now? Because it sounds like you don't fall off the wagon or else you get back on quickly.
Yeah, I don't. Well, first off, I have a lot of experience now because, I've been messing around with this for 3 years now, maybe more, as far as getting down to my goal weight, which by the way, it took decades. For decades, I was trying everything on the planet. And it was only when I stumbled upon your information that something really clicked. I think the main thing now is creating very specific rules for the holidays. So let's just throw out an example, Thanksgiving. How am I going to stick to my diet or stick to my rules, if you will, through this holiday that's all about eating? creating an exception, as in I am going to have a holiday dessert. I'm going to stick to my calorie limit or whatever your rules are. I'm going to stick with them, but I am going to allow myself a dessert, not allowing that to become 10 desserts and dessert every day for the week after. That has been really a game changer for me. The idea that I can have something without it turning into never ending cravings. Does this make sense?
Oh, yeah, because you're regulating your behavior with your intellect by putting very specific boundaries. You're fighting the deprivation squeal. You don't have to manage all the pressure that comes from family and friends to try this or try that. They don't feel guilty about what they're eating and they see you having a little something. And you don't get swept up with the emotional food orgy that everybody associates with Thanksgiving. You have your piece and that's it. You're really regulated intellectually, and that inoculates you against the emotional tidal wave of food consumption that is normally associated with the holidays. So that makes perfect sense to me. Did you enjoy your dessert on Thanksgiving?
Yes, and that's the thing too that I wanted to say. One of the things that I have learned is that the food orgy actually creates a lot of disappointment and a lot of guilt and a lot of shame. And the enjoying the one dessert, you really enjoy it. It is special. It's not just more of the same. It's not just the gobbling. It's actually really enjoyable and really special.
One tastes a lot better than 10, right?
Exactly. We always say, we've all observed the first bite of something is always the most delicious bite. And the one dessert is delicious. The three desserts by the third one, from a science standpoint, it's all like this dopamine and brain chemicals and what drives this kind of thing. Well, by the third dessert, you've kind of depleted all of that anyway. And now you're just eating for the sake of eating.
Exactly.
And it's not even fun anymore, and it's not delicious, and it's not special. It's just pigging out. And it's actually no fun. I was recently interacting with somebody on our DYC circle, the Facebook list. One of the things that they were saying is that they were fighting this urge to eat a donut in their office, and they realized that the last time they had given in and eaten a donut that was in the break room at the office, they were disappointed. Like the donut looked better than it actually was. And I think that about all of this craziness that we get into with the holidays, with all the parties and all the events, and everything is food driven, and it all becomes weirdly disappointing. We reach for it thinking, oh, that looks delicious. And you take a bite and you're kind of like, oh, okay, well, yeah, it's okay. I guess I'll finish it.
It's not the food orgasm that you thought it was going to be.
Exactly. I think that our inner pig that wants us to overeat and is always urging us to have one more and to seek out new and interesting situations, it's always remembering what it was like when we were children.
Yeah.
Where anything sweet, anything that contained sugar would kind of drive those urges.
And when we didn't pay the same price for it because our pancreas is more replete with high functioning insulin cells, we could stabilize our blood sugar more quickly afterwards. And we didn't have all these roles and responsibilities. We could just run around and burn off the sugar all day.
Yeah, we didn't necessarily have any health issues that were going to be impacted. I don't think children get heartburn, do they?
I don't know.
I don't remember ever having heartburn until I was an
The
adult.
things that I pass through my body, I'm not remembering heartburn. You're probably right. We probably don't get heartburn.
There's that part of your brain that's sort of like, ooh, cookies, like when you were a little kid.
Little kids are like goats, right? They could eat a tin can.
Right, exactly. And here we are as adults having that same memory in the back of our brain. Ooh, cookies, or ooh, Christmas. There's going to be candy and cookies. I think sometimes we're on autopilot and we think we're enjoying it, but we're really not. If you step back and analyze the situation, you're kind of like, no, I'm just eating at this point, like looking for that experience and not really getting it.
Gotcha. I have another question for you. How did you come to the decision? Because another way to look at Thanksgiving, for example, is that another word for Thanksgiving is just Thursday, right? and you could just stay on your regular food plan and not make any variations and treat it like a regular day and choose to enjoy the memories and the people and the company and the experience much more so than the food. Like most people, how did you decide that you wanted to conditionally alter your food plan for the holiday?
Well, knowing that there are different pressures, that there would be different foods available that are not normally available, that there would be situations where there would be maybe a lot of people, or maybe even I'm hosting. So you have that, I don't know, nervousness or anxiety surrounding like wanting to throw a good party. Just recognizing that I know at some point I'm going to be feeling, I don't know, weak. Like there's so much other stuff going on that I'm not going to have the bandwidth to really sit with myself, maybe do a refutation, and to plan for that rather than just letting it happen, to plan for it, knowing that that is going to be the case, that I'm going to be at a party or an event and somebody is going to be saying, "Oh, you have to try this." How will I handle that? And it has to be something really special. That was the other thing, too, that I determined, to only focus on changing your rules or making an exception to your rules for something that is truly special. And knowing that that would happen, that there would be something really special being offered, and to all the other things, there will be a no thank you. And to maybe this one thing, I'm going to allow myself that one dessert or that one special appetizer or just a taste of certain foods so that I can join in the group saying, "Oh, wow, that was delicious. Thank you so much for making that." Just to have a plan. All of this is about planning. Every day I have a plan. Not the specifics of like, I'm eating this for breakfast, this for lunch, but that there is a specific plan for the day.
Did it go off without a hitch? Did you get through the Thanksgiving holiday without a hitch?
This year I did, but in years past, obviously, as I was learning this, I had to learn to give myself that grace that I'm learning a new skill. And that took a while. That took a while for me to learn to stop chastising myself for having it not all in place yet. That took like the first year of me embracing all of your techniques because I had to learn them.
What are you planning for Christmas and New Year's?
Christmas and New Year's, Christmas will be at my daughter's house. Christmas Eve will be at my friend's house who lives on the way to our daughter's house. Our daughter lives about an hour and a half away. And so I have a very specific plan. At my friend's house, she is really into serving little appetizers before the meal, and that's kind of her specialty. So I will allow myself to have one of each. And, she generally has three things that she puts out. At my daughter's house, it will be breakfast because Christmas breakfast is kind of something special. We do brunch on Christmas, and then a dessert later in the evening.
What does your family think of all this? Are you experiencing any pressure from it? Is it very comfortable?
The only time I've had an issue with family or friends is when we've been traveling. And it's because those are people that don't see me in my day to day life and they have me firmly, especially my family of origin. They still treat me like I'm,
Your food buddy?
yeah, and kind of like a kid. And they think of me as, I don't know, like a good time. I'm funny and outgoing and it's no holds barred. And so they are often surprised to see me not partaking. But it's interesting because that has created a sense of rebellion in myself. I don't know if you've experienced the concept of when we're back with family, they treat us like we're in a specific role and we easily fall into that role.
We develop a false self in order to please them when we're young.
Exactly.
And then we get out and we are independent and we nurture our true selves very much more, but they're not really part of that growth. Then you go back and you're with your parents and you're like, go to your room or, yeah.
Right, right. And you're like, okay.
Okay, I'll go. Okay.
Oh no, I feel ashamed and bad. I'm in trouble. There was a specific time, one time, this was years ago. This was actually before discovering all your techniques and ideas, that I was on a diet and I was counting calories and I had a little book. This was also before we could have these apps on our phones. So this is a long time ago. I had a little book that was calorie counting, and I was looking up the calories in the dinner that my brother and his family had prepared and writing them down. And my brother grabbed the book out of my hand and he was like, "What are you doing? That's weird," and all this other stuff. And I immediately looked ashamed, like I had been caught doing something naughty. And it was my husband who was sitting there, and he's a quiet guy and he doesn't say a lot. And he very calmly looked at my brother and said, "I believe she's trying to save her life."
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was a really powerful moment. That's why I remember it, And then my brother was kind of like, whatever, and rolled his eyes and walked away. But it was very powerful because it kind of drove that point home to me. At the time, I was probably 100 pounds overweight and really struggling with diabetes on a multitude of medications, was struggling with my eyesight starting to change and some numbness in my feet, like scary stuff. And at the time, I was only in maybe my early 40s, so far too young to be really struggling with that kind of illness. And one of the things I found out is that that's more common than one might think. People struggling with really serious illness because of their eating habits.
Yeah, they don't let on.
Well, it creates a lot of shame. We don't want to talk about it. We don't want anybody to know.
Right. And a lot of these things are diet preventable or diet reversible, but doctors have kind of given up on getting people to change their diet. They just prescribe the medication.
They just prescribe a lot of medication. I had gotten up all my nerve to basically say, what should I actually be doing? And he said to me, basically, I can tell you what I do, which is what I call supervised neglect. We watch people neglect their illnesses, but we supervise it and we basically document it through your medical records. It's like saying, look, it's going to take you 20 years with this ailment to die, and I will document your path.
They can't get in trouble with that because it's standard practice. They're doing what the medical boards and other doctors are doing.
Yep, it's the standard of care, because what else can they do? They cannot follow you home and slap the cookie out of your hand. I mean, what else can they do aside from say, I'm going to send you to a dietitian? I mean, almost all diabetics end up getting told, or people with really high blood pressure, whatever, insert a million different ailments. I'm going to send you to a dietitian, or I recommend this program, a commercial program, whatever. And, people dread going to the doctor because they know they're going to get weighed. And the doctor at some point is going to make a comment about their weight, and it feels insulting and terrible. And I have a friend who's a physician who says, yeah, we don't even do that anymore. People get so upset and we get threatened with lawsuit if we say, look, Mrs. Whatever, I think you should lose a few pounds. That's now seen as a high insult rather than just a fact.
And some of these doctors are not a pillar of health themselves.
Oh, no. Oh, I had a doctor who was quite overweight and she smelled of cigarette smoke. She was obviously wearing her lab coat outside to catch a smoke, like in between patients. And it was like, wow, I am so sorry. It's such a bad habit.
When you've coached people for me, or when you've kind of helped your friends get through the holidays, is there anything different that you tell them or struggles that they've had that you didn't have? Anything come to mind about that?
Yeah, it's interesting to watch people struggle with things I used to struggle with. And so I can relate, but I also have to remember. I have to remember those feelings of being completely out of control, those feelings of there is no way I can avoid Aunt Betty's chocolate cake. There's absolutely no way. And it's like, actually, there's a lot of ways. But again, this is something that needs to build. We're always looking for like a super quick, I'm going to go on this specific commercial diet, or I'm going to get a procedure, a surgery, whatever. And by next week, I will be slender and everything will be perfect. And this will all be in place. And that's not how it works.
So let me say a couple of things about that, if I could.
Yeah.
First of all, I think people should take heart that someone like you or me, we have to dig deep in our memories to remember what it felt like to feel powerless and helpless and out of control. And I really did feel like that. I felt like someone had a gun to my head and told me to go through 7 drive-thrus and eat as much as I could, but not do it all at one place and nobody would know what I was doing. I felt like there was no way to avoid the chocolate bar. I almost felt like it was talking to me and I was losing a war with it, but it was just a feeling. unfortunately, that feeling is reinforced by the notion of powerlessness in our culture. The prevailing concept of addiction is that you have to admit powerlessness over it, which is different than admitting that it's serious and requires a significant effort and a lot of attention and work. But they tell you have to admit that you're powerless over it. There's nothing you can do, and you have to get God to take it away from you. And for those people who that works for, God bless them, and please keep doing that. But I've found that it's actually something that makes addictive struggles worse. And I work almost entirely with food, but I've seen it in other addictions too. I say that the feeling of powerlessness is like a cancer for overeaters. And it's the first thing you really have to fight. That's why I have people start with one simple rule. We set the bar really low. Because if you can prove there's one thing you can do, like maybe you don't go back for seconds, or maybe you count to 3 before you eat every time, if there's one thing you can do, then you're not a victim of this automated habit loop against which there is no defense. Then you're proving that you're powerful. The other thing that I have people do, and this works relatively quickly, I agree with you that things have to build over time, but with regards to the feeling of powerlessness, make a list of what you've done right in the last 6 months or so. The odds are you haven't binged at every single meal. The odds are that once in a very great while you had a salad. And actually, when people add it up, most people who really struggle with overeating and binge eating, they eat well a fairly high percentage of the time. In some ways, they eat too well. They're a little too restrictive, and then they have these horrible binges. And so if you say, let's just look at the last week, say I had one really, really, really bad binge, but otherwise I did okay. Well, that's one meal out of 21. What is that about? If you divide 100 by 21, it's less than 5%. So you've actually been on track 95% of the time. That doesn't sound like someone who's powerless for me. What else have you done? Well, when I put this refutation together for myself many years ago, I would look at the fact that I've maintained my exercise at reasonable levels, that I'd been within 10% of my ideal weight for a very, very long time. I don't eat animal products, and I had maintained that for many years. And I looked at all of these things that I had done, which proved that I could do it. Because my pig would be saying, you're powerless, you're hopeless, you screwed up yesterday. Obviously, you're going to screw up at the Christmas party. You're powerless over this, and you just have to admit it. But I found making those lists of things and then reading them out loud over and over again when I was really struggling, it made all the difference in the world.
Yeah, it's the evidence of success, the concept of that looking for evidence, right? Of your own success so that you don't have that powerless feeling.
But quantifying it. What percent of my meals over the last month have been on plan versus off plan? What percent of the time did I maintain this line or that line? And really quantifying that. If I were on trial and they were trying to prove that I couldn't control myself and I had to be locked up or something, or I was going to eat all the food in society, the overwhelming proof that I'd want my attorney to offer would have numbers and statistics in it.
Yeah. I love that idea. And that is definitely something I started doing early in the game. Like, that first year, yeah, I wasn't perfect. I can think of specific instances, but I'm aware of them and I actually remember them now. Whereas before it was just I was on autopilot. It's the holidays, you eat. That's what everybody does. That's part of the celebration. I mean, look at all the stuff that gets marketed to us about the holidays and all the things you're going to need to have a complete holiday. The planning is the biggest thing that has helped me, has helped my clients and friends, is just say to them, you can have a plan of how you're going to deal with every holiday, every event. Having a plan has been key for me. Absolutely. I mean, I used to go into these things with a hope. Hopefully, I won't gain weight this year. Hopefully, I'll be in better control. Hopefully, I won't eat all the cookies. I'll just eat some of the cookies. And now having a plan that's specific, I will have 3 cookies. That is the plan.
One of the most helpful things I was taught in business was that if you don't have a plan, you're part of someone else's. And it's very much true with food also, especially around the holidays. If you don't have a plan to have 1 cookie or no cookies, then you're going to be part of your family's plan to watch you have 12 cookies, right? Well, if you don't have a plan, you're going to be part of someone else's. And it's generally true, not even on the holidays, given the corporate greed and the type of tricks and tools and things that the packaged food manufacturers do to make these foods seem irresistible. If you don't have a plan for what you're going to do about the things that they get you with, then they're going to get you and laugh all the way to the bank. So you got to have a plan or be part of someone else's.
I've recently discovered this in the last year. So most of us have heard the little acronym FOMO, fear of missing out. And I have been embracing JOMO, the joy of missing out.
Really? Tell me. Tell me.
Yeah. I'm really digging this. So we have this fear of missing out. You know, if I don't eat the cookies, I've missed out. If I don't go to that one specific party, I've missed out. We have this fear of missing out or being left out or not being a part of whatever the latest insanity is. And lately, I have been really embracing JOMO, the joy of missing out. The pride that I feel in not being the person that ate all the cookies or got drunk at the party or had that third glass of wine or whatever your thing is. The joy of being able to walk away and say, you know, I handled that really well. I interacted with people and it was a good time, but I didn't go crazy at the buffet. I didn't. And I hate to say this, maybe I shouldn't be confessing this, but it's not that we feel joy in watching other people's downfall, but as humans, we are naturally competitive and we are making the comparison, if you will, of, you know, I'm watching my friend Mary at this buffet and I'm thinking that used to be me. 2 years ago, that would have been me, back up to the buffet table for the third time. And I don't do that anymore. And there's a joy there. There's an absolute joy and pride. And then, of course, if it's somebody you love, watching them struggle with the habit that you used to have, you want to help them. And you hope that you're setting a good example and maybe they'll come to you and say, okay, what's the secret? Does this make sense? I mean, as far as that, like the FOMO versus JOMO.
You are phenomenal with acronyms. That's a very useful acronym. I'd like to borrow that from you, and I'll give you credit.
Absolutely. I don't know that I made it up. You can have it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. I will tell people that you told me about that. The other acronym you had was the 3 R's.
Oh, yeah, the 3 R's. Do them every day, and I do them every day. I read my rules. I either read a refutation that's, you know, I generally write a new one a couple of times a month because I'll be thinking about something specific. So my refutation. And then the other thing is, you know, we talk about in DYC writing a big why. Well, my big why I call my reasons. They're my reasons. What are the reasons why I follow these rules? And of course, you know, everybody's reasons can be different. But I think we often all have some commonalities in wanting to be fit and healthy so that we can enjoy our lives. And however you word that, whatever your specifics are, but it's powerful. And, you know, I keep them on my laptop and that way they're really easy to tweak and change. I might change the wording in something. It keeps it fresh. It keeps it as a living document rather than just something stale and boring that I'm reciting to myself. When it comes to holidays or special challenges of going out to a restaurant, whatever your challenge is, the FOMO versus JOMO, is your fear being left out or missing out, is that stronger than the joy of missing out? The joy of saying, yeah, no, I don't need to eat all the French fries on the plate. I really don't. They all taste the same. They're boring. They're not that great. They're always, at least for me, mildly disappointing, those types of foods, you know, fried foods and processed foods. And we have some memory in our head that they're going to be great and that this is going to be such an enjoyable experience. And it's almost always disappointing if you really think about it.
Kimberly, if we went beyond talking about the holidays, are there other acronyms that you use?
Oh, yeah. You know, there's a lot of mantras that I use.
Tell me.
One that anybody who's listened to your podcast has heard me say 1,000 times is, you know, I'm too old for this, insert whichever explicative you'd like. I use the SHIT one. I'm too old for this, you know, and that is really, really powerful to me. If you're somebody who has struggled with your weight or eating habits or both for any amount of time in your adult life, you realize that it's like, so when does this end? One of the things that I've been saying to myself a lot recently is I want to choose the last time I do something. You could let literally death choose the last time you do something, maybe a doctor telling you don't do that anymore, whatever. I like to be in control of me. And so I want to choose the last time.
That must help when the pig says, just one more time, just one last time.
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. You'll get back on track tomorrow. Just for today, go ahead and let loose and eat whatever food is being offered or have another beer or whatever. And it's like, no, I want to choose the last one. I like that.
I love that. What else?
Well, I do like acronyms. It's funny. I never thought about that before you pointing that out, but
You're good at them.
I have some exercise routines that I go through, and I have little initials that stand for the specific exercise. Those are just personal to me. I had some issues with balance a few years ago, so I do a lot of yoga and I have specific balance things, and I like numbers. The number 3, hence my 3 R's, tends to be one of my favorite numbers. So I'll often do things in multiples of 3. I'm going to do 21 push-ups because 3 times 7.
I see.
Silly things like that.
Because you gotta.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
because you just gotta.
You
I
know
get
what?
it.
It becomes like little head games to play, and I don't know whether that makes things less boring. There's a lot of tasks that we need to do, especially our inner pig will tell us is boring. That's boring. You don't want to do that. That's boring. Eating a salad is boring. Eating a plate of donuts would be fun. Eating a salad is boring. It's terrible, these head games we play with ourselves. But I can promise people, I promise you, I can't say this enough. If you work on these techniques and you really learn them and you practice them every day, they become easier and easier. They become anything but boring. Going back to the way you were before is the thing that's boring. It's amazing. I am a completely different person. And I've heard other people say that. And years ago, I couldn't relate to it at all. I was like, no, I'm inextricably trapped. This is who I am. It's who I was trained to be as a child. It's in my DNA. I have some really overweight aunts, and apparently I look like them. I don't know. I'm more slender than I was when I was 20.
It's great. Is there anything else that I should have asked you that you wanted to share about the holidays or anything else?
No, just to reiterate, if you're going to make exceptions to your rules, if you're going to ride out the holidays and say, nope, I'm going to stick to my rules 100%, I don't need an exception, that is awesome. I absolutely applaud you and I encourage that completely. But if you decide that you want to make some exceptions, make them very specific and focus on the things that are really special, to you. Silly example, if there are 10 kinds of cookies being served, or maybe you're the one who's baking them, pick the one that's your favorite. Don't decide that I'm going to let myself have cookies, so I'm going to have them all. It's like, no, pick the one that's really awesome, that you love. Really focus on only doing the things that are truly special to you.
And it's kind of counterintuitive because people are frightened of the strength of the impulse associated with their favorite treat. And until you've had the experience that these boundaries can actually work and you've caged your pig in all these other ways, it can seem like, well, I'll have cookies, but I'll have the ones that don't really taste good. That's actually not a good idea. If you're going to do it, you need to get an awful lot of pleasure out of it so that you can feel satisfied with a little bit and make it worth it. Yeah.
Yeah, make it worth it. And then the other thing I like to tell people is take care with alcohol. Because at the holidays, Christmas, New Year's Eve, whatever, that's another thing in our culture. If you look at the ads that are even out there right now, there is this alcohol obsession, that we're not having a good time with friends and family unless we're tying one on and we're all toasting together and that kind of thing. It doesn't mean that you can't have any, depending on who you are, obviously, and what your habits are, but make a rule. because, we've talked about this before. If there is anything that is the key to the lock on the pig's cage, it's alcohol.
Well, I mean, the function of alcohol is to inhibit the executive function, the part of us that controls our impulses. I've worked with a lot of people, Kim. You have too. Don't want people to shoot the messenger, but I have to tell you that most women, except for very, very big women, have told me that if they have more than one drink an hour, and usually more than two drinks in total in an event or something, that they have a lot of trouble sticking to their rules. And every now and then there are people that insist that they could have six or eight or something like that. And I'll support you to try if you want to do that, but I'm not going to take the blame if you.
No, I've heard you say to people on Q&A calls where they want to discuss alcohol and they want to say things like, I'm going to a wedding next week. I'm going to set a limit for myself of 5. And it's sort of like, I mean, I don't know your normal habits, but that sounds like a lot. And I have heard you say, I don't know how to get you drunk and keep you on your program,
Right. I can do a lot of things. I've learned a lot over the years, work with a lot of people, but teaching you how to stick to your food plan when you're drunk, I don't know how to do that.
No. And that's the thing. I had a friend years ago make the comment, I've decided to stop drinking. And I said, oh, do you feel like you were developing a problem, like a bad habit with it? And he said, no, I really don't have a bad habit with it, but I'm very overweight. I need to lose weight. Not only does the alcohol have calories in it that I don't need, but he said, I find that I make very poor food choices when I've had a couple of beers. And, we've all observed it in ourselves or other people. We can make bad choices in general if we've had too much alcohol. So around the holidays, that's another thing that I advise clients and friends. It's like, if you're going to make exceptions to your rules and you're somebody who does imbibe or enjoy a drink now and then, the first exception might be to decide what your limit is on alcohol.
You got to know your limits. You got to know over what limit you're unable to control yourself and work within those limits.
Right, exactly. And most alcohol does have really unnecessary calories.
I have one last question for you. Was your husband always this supportive of your food plan and your efforts?
Yes and no. For many years, my husband had a really intense career. And so he was kind of oblivious to what I was struggling with. He was supportive from the standpoint that he was not one of those people who says, hey, you're getting fat, or, oh, you shouldn't eat that, or, you know what I mean? Like, he was never somebody who was insulting or made me feel bad about my situation. But he was also pretty oblivious to it. He loved me no matter what, and obviously that was nice, and I do the same for him. But it was actually when my diabetes started to get bad and I started to talk more about it to him and share my fears and that kind of thing that he became more supportive. He's never had a weight problem himself. He's an incredibly moderate eater. He's one of those people that we all look at and say, I wish I could be that way. He's always been pretty naturally fit. He doesn't really have a sweet tooth. It's interesting. And I knew his mother very well, and I took care of her in the last 3 years of her life. She was like that. And I, honest to God, think it was genetic. It's not like she taught him anything. I don't completely understand it. I feel really happy that our daughter inherited that, whatever it is. But yeah, he has been supportive from the standpoint that he was never insulting or mean about it. He wasn't that guy that would be like, oh, you're on a diet and I've decided I'm going to buy a box of donuts and leave them on the kitchen counter. I've heard a million stories. I've observed it firsthand in friends and other family members. That's rough. That's like trying to quit smoking when you have a smoker in your house. And that is rough. And I really feel for people that are dealing with that, where their spouse or other family members sabotage them or give them such a hard time that they kind of become on the side of that inner pig that tells us that we're worthless and powerless. If you're struggling with your weight, having somebody in your life that keeps pointing out that you're overweight, that's not very helpful.
That really doesn't help. I'd like to have one last question. Did your husband get extra kudos that day that he spoke up to your brother?
Yes, he did indeed. He did indeed. And he knows that it's a strong memory for me. And he thought he was just kind of jumping in to shut down my brothers so that I wouldn't get upset, but it was really impactful. I mean, it was something that stuck in my head, not just that he had done that for me, but that it was the truth, that I wasn't just somebody trying to diet and lose a couple pounds so that I could look nicer. I was actually trying to save my own life.
You're eating for your life.
And it felt a little bit like if you were struggling to keep your head above water, let's say you went into the deep end of the pool and you couldn't swim, and you're struggling to keep your head above water. And it was like my brother was coming by and tapping me on the head to push me a little further down. And my husband came and actually helped me, like put his arm under my arm to pull me up. And it was like, yeah, no, I'm never going to forget that one. He's a good guy. Steve's a good guy.
Okay. Give him a hug for me, okay?
I will indeed.
Tell him I appreciate him keeping you around.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, I'm going to need to wind down in a minute or two. Is there any last thing that you'd like to tell people or?
Nope. You have done at least a dozen podcasts over the years about the concept of the alternative love gift. And I know that that's one of the things that people deal with at holidays, going to somebody's house or whatever, or somebody bringing treats to their house. And it's a gift of love that this person is offering their home-baked goodness. And we feel like we can't turn it down without being insulting. And actually we can. We can. There's lots of ways to say no, thank you. There's lots of ways to say, I'm just going to wrap this up and have it later. I love your examples that you've given, and people will find them familiar if they've listened to your other podcasts, so I won't go on and on about it. But that concept of saying, my tummy is a little upset, do you have any tea? I'd like a cup of tea.
Give them something else to welcome you with. You give them another loving behavior they can offer you.
And you know what? We can turn that around and recognize that in our own lives, the love gifts we offer to people can be healthy and lovely things and not always just sweets and food.
Exactly.
Yeah, we can practice it ourselves.
Kimberly, thank you so much for coming on. This was terrific.
Oh, good.
And that brings us to the end of today's broadcast of Defeat Your Cravings, hosted by Dr. Glenn Livingston. If you'd like to find out more about the products and services Dr. Glenn offers to help you dramatically reduce your cravings and stop overeating in 90 days or less, please visit defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. That's defeatyourcravingscoaching.com. Thanks.